Hello my loves, thank you for joining me for another video. My name is Ennie and I post solved and solved the missing persons cases here on my channel. If you enjoy this type of content, you are welcome. Please consider subscribing to this channel. Our case today starts in South Korea and ends in the United States. It is important to cover this case at this time because of what is beginning to become a rather frequent occurrence at schools and public places around the world. This is the case of Cho Seung-hui. So Cho was born on January the 18th, 1984 in Asan, South Korea to hardworking parents. His parents had an arranged marriage. They didn't date or even know each other. It was said that his mother, who was actually very well educated, got matched with his father when she was 29 years old. Cho's father, Seung-hui Cho, was from a poor family and he was way older than Cho's mother, who was 29 years old at the time. He was 10 years older than her, so that would make him 39 when they got married. This was a very odd match. Cho's mother, Kim Hyung-in, didn't want to be married to a poor older guy, but she had no choice. She had to obey her parents, so the marriage was done and they became man and wife. Cho's father didn't have much, but he was hardworking. He did what he could to provide for his family. He bounced from job to job. They both worked in different shops at different times to make money for the family. He even had a bookstore at some point. As time went on, Cho's mother began to warm up to her husband. What would she rather do? Run away from the marriage? Asians are big on obeying one's parents, so how would her family feel if she ran away from the marriage they had arranged for her? So not too long after they wedded, they had their first child, a beautiful girl, and then they had Cho. The family, however, continued to struggle financially. They lived in a very small basement that was very cheap in Seoul. That was what they could afford at the time, so they made it work. Being poor didn't mean that all hope was lost. The parents had big plans for the family. They were just waiting and doing all they could until their dreams came to actualization. So Cho's older sister was said to be very smart, super brilliant, lovable and humble. She was doing very good at school. But Cho, on the flip side, was like the direct opposite of his sister. I know no two persons are the same. Yes, siblings most times are polar opposites of each other, even twins. But Cho's difference was to the extreme. And here is why. From a young age, he didn't speak at all. He never responded to greetings or calls, not from his parents, grandparents, or even neighbors. He never makes eye contact nor show affection. He just didn't respond to anyone, you know what I mean? Everyone in the family and people who knew Cho concluded he was a mute, maybe selectively, or he had some form of autism, or maybe there was some sort of mental incapacity going on. However, I am not sure if he was taken to the hospital and properly diagnosed at this stage. When Cho was about 8 years old, his family got the opportunity to move to the United States and they took the opportunity. This meant better opportunities for them and their children. So in September of 1992, they moved to Detroit, then they moved to Washington because it had a large number of Korean immigrants and they wanted to live amongst their fellow countrymen. The family settled in Centerville, west of Fairfax County in Washington, D.C. Upon arrival, the parents quickly opened a business. They had a laundry dry cleaning business. They both worked 6 days a week, washing and ironing clothes. The money was not enough to keep them going though, so Cho's mother had to work part-time at a restaurant to make more money. The family was a Christian family, so when the parents were not at work on Sundays, they made it a duty to be at a Korean church they had joined in Virginia. I think it was a Korean Presbyterian church. Meanwhile, Cho was still non-verbal. He wouldn't talk to anyone. He kept to himself, so his mother tried to get him help at the church, but that didn't get anywhere either. Cho was enrolled in the popular Tree Elementary School in Chantilly, but it was said that every time he came home from school, he would cry and throw tantrums saying he never wanted to return to school. I am not sure how he expressed this. I don't think he said this verbally, but he didn't just want to go to school. By the 8th grade, he had quickly become a target for bullies. It wasn't easy for him to fit in. He wasn't talking, so how could he make friends? It wasn't like he was put in a special school of some sort. He was in a regular class with other kids, so they all treated him like a regular student. They bullied him for his ethnicity, they bullied him for his shyness, they bullied him for his unusual mannerism and being so quiet. Cho fell deeply and deeper into self-isolation. He had no friends, he wasn't opening to his parents or anyone who tried to help. All of this was weighing on his parents so much they took him to a proper hospital. It was at this point in middle school that Cho was diagnosed with severe anxiety depressive disorder and selective mutism disorder. Feel free to look this up to get more insight into what this means. So his parents got him into therapy after he was diagnosed. He also got some counseling, special education support under the emotional disturbance classification. He was excused from oral presentations and class conversations and received speech therapy. He continued receiving mental health therapy as well until the end of his junior year. I am not sure if this treatment helped at the time or not, because in the long run, Cho remained the same. He still kept to himself, he didn't go out. In fact, neighbors didn't even know he existed. You can imagine how reclusive he was. In 1999, the Columbian High School situation happened, and Cho was said to be so interested in the news that he wrote in a school assignment about wanting to repeat Columbine. The school immediately contacted Cho's older sister, who reported the incident to their parents. Cho was sent to see a psychiatrist, but it's not clear how that went. I couldn't find more information on that. Meanwhile, the parents were doing what they could to take care of the family, working different jobs, saving up money. Eventually, their hard work pays off and they were able to save up enough to buy a house, and they all moved to this new house. Here, people in the area still didn't know about Cho. He was just in the shadows. People around didn't know he existed. The parents at this point stopped talking about him or even referring to him. It was like Cho didn't really exist anymore. So when Cho graduated high school in 2003 and got admitted into college, it came as a shock to the family and friends, at least the individuals who knew of him and his struggles. Cho's older sister on his own was doing pretty good at school. She got an offer from Harvard but chose to attend Princeton University. She eventually did graduate from an Ivy League like she always wanted. How sweet. So back to Cho himself. In 2003, he got admitted into Virginia Tech to study English and business. I know what you're thinking. How was he going to manage his studies? Well, your guess is right. College environment made his state of mind worse than it was before. It is said that due to some medical privacy type of law, Virginia Tech was never informed about Cho's medical history. You know how college life is, people get to know each other, especially freshers, but Cho wouldn't speak to anyone when spoken to. He didn't want to make friends, he always kept to himself. He was quiet, so a lot of people misunderstood him. They didn't know it was something going on with him mentally, and it wasn't his choice. It wasn't something he had control over. In his room, which was a 3-bedroom suite in Harper's Hall, his 5 roommates tried all they could to make him feel included. They continued to talk to him even if he wouldn't talk back. They would invite him places. Sometimes he would show up without saying a word, other times he would not show up at all. One time he was said to have come to a party and he just sat at a corner with his drink and kept poking the floor repeatedly for no reason. It was weird. Every interaction with Cho, according to one of his roommates, was like talking to a brick wall. There was no getting through to him. Meanwhile, in class, Cho's behavior wasn't any different. According to his poetry professor, Nikki Giovanni, she did all she could to get him to participate in classroom and on projects, but Cho wouldn't respond. Then strangely, Cho begins to secretly take pictures of the legs of his female classmates under the desk. Then he moved to attempting to take secret photos of his female professor. A pattern was beginning to form for Cho, you know. Then he began to put on paper dark poetry filled with violence and obscenities. Things were escalating with Cho, so the professor reported to the school authorities and eventually Cho was removed from her class. Another professor did try to work with him to tutor him one-on-one, but according to her, Cho was very arrogant and obnoxious to her, and at a point she feared for her safety, so she put a stop to the tutoring. She made sure his parents were notified of the development and the school recommended he get help. His parents didn't follow up on this, at least to the best of her knowledge. And I'm not exactly sure why, except that Cho was now an adult and should be able to make wise decisions for himself, but clearly he could not because he was unstable. The school on their part didn't check if Cho did get the help that they had recommended. That was one thing they did wrong. The police could not do much in these cases because there had been no direct threat to any individual at this point. One thing I came across that got my attention was that Cho's parents never checked on him at school, not at any point in time at all, knowing fully well the state of his mind. Not even when the school reached out to them about him being removed from poetry class did they try to check on his progress. It's like they just dumped him in school and let him do as they please. It makes me to wonder. Meanwhile, Cho's mental health was deteriorating. He was telling his roommates in not so many words while under the influence of alcohol that he had an imaginary supermodel girlfriend called Jelly who lived in space. Then he would also play the song Shine by Collective Soul over and over again on repeat. Then he would sometimes write song lyrics on the wall. I mean, an adult was doing all of this and no one cared to get him help or even report him like his professor did. The guy was basically unraveling. Cho was sinking into this deep darkness speedily. He was kind of sullen and aloof, but at a point he began to chat up girls online. Girls that went to the same school as him. It's not clear how he knew they were in Virginia Tech, but he chatted them up anyways. Most of these girls didn't even know who they were chatting with online because online, Cho's name was nothing but question mark, just a question mark. Then Cho somehow tracked down two of these girls in school and started stalking them in their dorm rooms. This was now on another level. The girls involved the campus police, and on November 27, 2005, the police visited his dorm room and warned him to stay away from them. Then on October 13, 2005, Cho got in touch with a female friend of one of his roommates online and wrote on her doorboard a line from Romeo and Juliet. The lady freaked out and called the campus police on him again, and he got only a warning still. But that very same day, Cho sent a self-harm type of email to his roommate. It was at this point that the authorities took Cho to a mental facility to be examined. He was held there for a couple of days, then he was released. I'm not sure if his parents came to see him or find out exactly what was going on. Were they even aware? I don't know. To show you how bad his state of mind was, Cho had thought it was some sort of game. The doctor who attended to Cho at the facility did say that Cho was a danger to both himself and to others, and various treatments were recommended for him, but Cho never got them. Who will make him go for them? No one followed up on his court-ordered treatment, not even his parents. At least they didn't give him professional help. They told their church about Cho's problems, and the church tried to pray the illness or the demons out of him, but that was no good. The school didn't follow up on his treatment either. The community service officials also didn't follow up. And since there was no professional evaluation and treatment at this stage in his life, no one knew how bad things got in his mind. Things began to unravel gradually. First of all, Cho goes and buys the weapon. No one knew about this. I'm not sure what the laws are in US about this type of purchases, but he was able to purchase not just a weapon, it was a repeated purchase within months, all without stress. Then he slowly begins to put together a kit. At this point, only him knew what was in that package. Then he begins to secretly video himself, making confessions and rantings and manifestos, having weird conversations with himself. Are you confused? We all thought he was mute, right? Well, newsflash, Cho wasn't mute at all, but nobody knew it just yet. Everything began to unravel on the morning of April 16, 2007. At about 15 minutes past 7 a.m. that fateful morning, Cho walks into Emily Hishka's room on the 4th floor of West Ambler Johnson Hall, a high-rise co-educational dormitory, and fires a weapon at her, taking her life instantly, just like that, unprovoked. There was this other student who heard the loud bang and decided to go check what was going on. As soon as he entered Emily's room, he came face to face with Cho, who didn't spare him either. He put a bullet in 22-year-old Rand Clark. Then Cho walks back to his own dorm room and cleans up, changed his clothes and starched the clothes that were stained with vital fluids from Emily and Clark. Then he hops on his computer. He was on that system for about an hour. So he takes out the hard drive, deletes emails, makes corrections to his manifestos and other stuff. After he was done, he picks up his backpack and walks to the local post office. Remember the kit, the package I mentioned earlier that Cho was putting together? That was what he had on him. He mails that package to NBC News. He addresses the package as A. Ishmael. In that package were his confession videos and manifestos, his bizarre rants and several photos of himself. The package would eventually get to NBC News on April 18, 2007. NBC contacted authorities and made the controversial decision to publicize Cho's communications by releasing a small fraction of what they had received. That is how we now know what Cho put in that package. Now, while Cho was going about his post office runs like he had done nothing, back at the dorm, the police had been notified and they arrived at the dorm room where Emily and Clark had been attacked. Somehow, the police came to the conclusion that whoever had done this had fled the scene already, and they were even suspecting that Emily Hishka's ex-boyfriend must have been involved. The school authorities knew what went down in that dorm room, but they didn't announce it. I don't know what their policies are in such situations, but they failed to alert students that there was so and so situation going on in so and so dorm room. Fast forward to 40 minutes past 9 a.m., roughly 2 hours after the dorm room situation, Cho re-enters the school. Only this time he came prepared, properly armed, all decked up with a variety of weapons, and his intentions were not good at all. First, he then crosses the campus to Norris Hall. Then he makes his way into the part of the hall which had the engineering, science, and mechanics rooms. Then he locks and barricades the main entrance with chains. No one could come in and no one could get out at this point. Then he begins to unleash evil. Cho walks casually into every classroom in sight on the second floor of the building, walking down the aisle of each of these classrooms, taking a shot at every student or professor he met. This was how he moved. So he kept moving. His first stop was room 200, where he just stood initially to observe what was going on. Then he makes his way to room 206 and opens fire, taking out 9 of his fellow students and a professor. Next was room 211. As he made his way into the class, students already knew something was going on, but they didn't have the chance to run. So instead, 2 students tried to barricade the door from inside to keep him out. But Cho blasted his way through, taking out the 2 students, Nowak and Henry. Matthew, one of the students in the classroom, tried to tackle Cho, but unfortunately, Cho saw him from the corner of his eye and took him out, firing multiple shots into him. Cho then went up and down the other classroom, like I said before, which by this time was in chaos. Students were terrified. They didn't understand exactly what was going on, except that there was a guy with a weapon on the loose, and they could hear the loud bangs as he came closer and closer to them, making sure he tries to shoot at everyone in every classroom he enters. In room 204, a Holocaust survivor who was a professor held the door closed so his students could escape through the window. Cho got to his class and unfortunately he was the only victim. Ultimately, Cho was able to walk into multiple classrooms, unleashing terror and causing mayhem. Some classrooms were safe, others weren't safe. To be safe, students had to pretend they were already passed on by just laying still so that he wouldn't know that they were alive and shoot them. All of Cho's rampage took nothing less than 10 minutes. By this time, the SWAT team had arrived and they were already gaining entrance into the main building where Cho was. Cho must have known they were there because he didn't want to surrender. He just pointed a weapon at himself and took himself out. The SWAT team went class by class, making sure students were okay and guiding them out. This was something that happened under 20 minutes, but it seemed like a lifetime. At the end of the day, 32 students lost their lives and 17 others were wounded due to Cho's madness. It would take several hours for the police to identify Cho by matching immigration records with the fingerprints on the weapons he had used. Nobody believed at first that Cho was the type to do a thing like this. I mean, he was quiet, reclusive, didn't bother anyone. Apart from the bizarre situation with his female classmate, he was in no way intimidating to anyone. Now, the package that he had made to NBC got to them on the 18th. Like I said earlier, it was supposed to get to them on the 17th, but they got it on the 18th, which was a day late, and they had this to say about it. The package included an 1800-word manifesto-like statement in which Cho expresses rage, resentment, and desire to get even. The material is very hard to follow. So there was actually no one that Cho was addressing specifically. He never mentioned names. His rants were kind of like random, bizarre, and off point. It just showed that he wasn't mentally stable. He bounced from topic to topic. One second he was talking about being pushed to the corner. The next was expressing how he hated wealthy people. But he did say he had postponed the attack several times. The most surprising factor here was that he was able to speak fluent English loudly and clearly. So what was it that had kept Cho from speaking all these years? Why did he choose to be mute all these years? Following the incident, the public kind of took it out on Cho's family, even though it wasn't a direct fault of theirs that Cho chose to do this. That very day, when news of the attack broke and the identity of the perpetrator was made public, Cho's family had to leave town on the advice of police, of course, because the authorities anticipated a backlash and threat from some members of the public. It was, however, only for a couple of months until things cooled down a bit, then they returned. Cho's elder sister did release a statement. She said, "We are humbled by this darkness. This is someone that I grew up with and loved. Now I feel like I don't know this person. He has made the world weep. We are living a nightmare." So apart from this statement, there was no other communication with the public. His parents never granted interviews or made any other public statement, and that's understandable. They just didn't want more backlash, I guess. Cho didn't only hurt the families of the people whose lives he took, he hurt his own family as well. His family continued to get these hate mails for months and months on end. I can't imagine what it was like for them at all, having your child do this to people then get blamed for it. They kept a very low profile afterwards as they tried to move on. In the aftermath of the shootings, Virginia Governor at the time, Tim Kaine, convened a panel that consisted of various officials and experts to investigate and examine the response and handling of everything that relates to the situation. The panel in August of 2007 released its final report. In Cho's medical history was like a focal point. The panel criticized the failure of the educators and mental health professionals who came in contact with Cho during his college years to notice his deteriorating mental condition and get him the help he needed. The panel faulted Virginia Tech administrators in particular for failing to take immediate action after they became aware of the demise of Emily Hishka and Ryan Clark that morning. But in conclusion, it was acknowledged that Cho must still be held primarily responsible for what he did. His emotional and psychological disabilities was not an excuse. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Cho is not here to be held accountable for his own actions. Let me know in the comment section what you take on from this case. For me, I would say please get help if you feel like your mental health is at stake. Get help for yourself, get help for your loved ones. Make sure to follow through with treatment. In this part of the world where I come from, mental health is not taken seriously. I pray we don't wait until a situation like this happens before we buckle up. With that being said, if this is the type of content you enjoy and you appreciate, please subscribe and click on the notification. Send me your case suggestions on Instagram and take care of your mental health. Until next video, bye.